Alright, so with the WCQ just a few days away, and of course there being 2 whole brand new boxes since I last did a video like this, I think it's time for me to give you my thoughts on what I think the current metagame looks like in the form of a tier list. So as per usual, I've tried to include as many decks as possible on here. Obviously, I can't include every single deck as that'd be completely ridiculous and the video would go on for absolutely forever. So if your particular deck isn't featured on here, it's probably because it just wasn't that popular recently or hasn't had many toppings in tournament play or something like that. If there's a particular deck on here or a particular deck that isn't on here you want me to give you my thoughts on, leave it down in the comments below and I'll respond to a few of them. But yeah, I've tried to cover most decks. Don't get offended if your deck isn't on here, it just wasn't popular enough to be featured in this video. Alright, obviously I've tried to include mostly new archetypes because that's what you guys probably want to know about. Is the new archetypes good enough for the metagame? That kind of thing. Alright, so let's jump into it. So first things first, the most important deck to go through for this video, because it provides a ton of context for the rest of the video, is Duel. Duel is by far the best deck in the game. I don't think it's even close. I am convinced Duel right now, in terms of its actual power level, it's a lot stronger of a tier 1 deck than the standard tier 1 decks. I'm saying, if everyone was really, really good at the game and there was an infinite timer, it would probably be a tier 0 deck. I think it's that level of power. It is so goddamn insane right now. It's incredibly strong. The only thing that's keeping it back is probably the timer and the fact the deck is so difficult, meaning a lot of decks can keep up with it just off players being bad or off people timing out. But there's been some ridiculous screenshots I've seen for this. There was one in particular, I think someone DM'd me earlier this morning, which I'll show right now actually. Someone DM'd me a screenshot of... There you go. A nice looking 60 game win streak with Duel. Yeah, and this guy's an insane player, by the way, so... Honestly, I think this deck is just absolutely ridiculous. I think it's honestly tier 0 level of power, but maybe the timer and the level of player is going to hold it back a little bit, but it is insane how strong this deck is. I think it's going to take up most of the slots in the upcoming KC Cup. And I think also, all the players that were playing things like Predaplan and Salamangre, all those like really heavy combo decks that are sort of skillful based, all those players are going to jump ship straight to this deck because it fills the same roles, all those archetypes, and it just does it way better. So yeah, I think Duel is by far the best. And also, it's important to note that Duel specifically, it impacts the meta a lot because of how the deck functions with Winder and all that kind of floodgatey stuff, meaning a lot of decks that can't play through Winder are just so much worse than they were. So anyway, let's jump into the rest of the list. So, Gemini. Gemini, I think, is still going to be sitting roughly around tier 3. It's still doing some pretty good stuff going first, but going second, obviously, it actually has some outs to Winder with Gemini Spark, which is a big deal, especially considering it can out the, not necessarily out Winder, but out the continuous trap card that summons Winder a lot of the time, meaning Sad has to open, like, the quick play spell and the fusion trap, which isn't too hard for them, but it does actually have at least somewhat of a playable matchup. And as opposed to all the other archetypes in the game, it just does a little bit better into Duel, I guess. It's not great, though. It's still pretty bad. And overall, it does okay against some of the other decks in the game, as it was before Duel was released. It was still doing fairly decent in tournaments, even with Resonator was dominating. It was still doing fine into that. So, yeah, Gemini's probably still doing okay. Resonator. Resonator is, based on what I've seen recently, it definitely has fallen off compared to the tier 1 deck. It's definitely dropped us here. But it still seems to be the only deck that's actually keeping up with Duel in terms of tournament placings. Whether or not it keeps doing so over the upcoming weeks, that's up for debate. But as of right now, from what I've seen from current results, Resonator is the only archetype that is, well, one of the only archetypes that seems to be actually keeping up still and still playable. So I guess I'll put it in tier 2. I guess once people figure out text and start playing more things like Cosmic Cyclone, which is, again, good into Construct, or not Construct, good into the... whatever the trap card name is for Duel. I should really learn the name of these cards. But the continuous trap card, obviously MST and Cosmic is really good into that. If you stop it, then they can't fusion someone out Winder a lot of the time. Also means they can't remove a monster from the field. So, yeah, I think once they figure out their techs, they're going to be pretty decent. And obviously against the rest of the decks in the pool, it's probably still the best deck. Maybe Utopia kind of competes with it. But against everything else, it is, yeah, the best deck out of the shitters, I would say. Alright. Tri-Brigade. I think Tri-Brigade is Rogue. It was borderline tier 3 last time I did a tier list. I think based on last like KC Cup results, there was a few Tri-Brigades in the top in the top 100 KC Cup results. But I think after this tier list, with the meta getting slightly stronger again, it probably just falls out, because it was only barely holding on before. It's still a good deck. I still expect to see a couple potentially in the top 100, just because people like playing this art type a lot. But in regards to it being... yeah, it was barely holding on before, so I think now it's probably just fallen out. Fleur. This hurts to say, but I think it is no longer tiered. Fleur, in my last tier list video, I definitely put it tier 3, and I do still believe that, and then the KC Cup results showed that perfectly. It was a bunch of them in the KC Cup top 100, but now I think it is, yeah. I can't really see a decent turn 1 setup against Shadow that's just foolproof. Maybe we start trying to play Abyss Dweller and try to get level 4s on field or some shit, but in the current iteration of Fleur, it seems pretty arse, so I'm going to put it in Rogue. I don't think it's particularly good. There might be some setup that just turns out to be specifically good against Shadow. You might be able to, like I said, stuff Abyss Dweller. Maybe then you can sort of survive. But going second, you're all about special summoning. It sounds awful. I'm pretty sure even before the skill was updated, I've tried to play against Shadow a few times, and it felt miserable. You'd always have to open, like... it was just miserable. I don't think the matchup's a real thing. Against everything else, it's okay, though, so maybe it can sneak its way back into the top tiers, I don't know. We've got your Odd Eyes. Odd Eyes. So this is after the new skill update with all the new stuff. Honestly, deck feels pretty meh. It's not quite Despair tier, but it's not... yeah, it's not even Rogue tier. It's just kind of there. It's not terrible, but it's definitely nowhere near the level of decks that I'm putting in Rogue tier. Like, these two decks just absolutely wipe the floor with this every single day of the week, so it's definitely more of a meh deck. Dinosaur. Dinosaur, I think, falls into same sort of category as Fleur, when it typically is playing the Fleur skill. It hasn't got any particular advantages over any of the other decks that are in the top tiers, so I don't particularly think it slots its way into tier 3. Even when I was looking at the last, like, KC Cup results, the Dinosaur players in top 100, none of them had any insane win rates. They all just had insane amount of games played, so that doesn't really tell me a whole lot about the deck, whether it's actually good or not. It just kind of says, oh, these guys played, like, 1 billion games. Of course they get top 100 if they got, like, a 55% win rate over 600 games. It's not really good results for a top 100 KC Cup, but... I don't know, maybe it manages to sneak its way up. I don't have a whole lot of faith in it. I think it's probably pretty bad into Winter. I'm trying to think if it's going first setup, if it's any good into the stuff that's currently being played, and it just doesn't seem that great. If they open, like a perfect field with, like, I don't know, Misk in hand as well as all that stuff, maybe it's okay. I may have been too harsh on Dino. Maybe it is tier 3. And it's one of these tiers. It's kind of close. It's definitely the upper ends of Rogue if it is Rogue. Maybe it is tier 3. It's somewhere here. Alright, DDD. This is Despair. DDD is, yeah. It's so funny to see. The DDD's turn 1 setup. It says on the DDD monster, but it's a worse setup than if you just played Shark, which also sits on the DDD monster. It says on the Synchro, I guess. It got the Synchro, the Synchro, the Dune, the Trap, and that is just not great. You know what's also pretty funny about it? Looking at the field that they set up, looks kind of similar to what Speedroid currently sets up, so that's a bit of a spoiler alert for my thoughts on Speedroid when we get to it in a moment, but yeah, that kind of field right now just isn't enough. Having a Spell Negate, a Monster Negate, or the Special Summon Negate, and the Trap card, it just isn't actually enough currently, which feels weird. But it's also mostly because it can't go second, really, either, which is a big downside, which is something Speedroid actually can do. But turn 1 setup is just complete arse cheeks. It just doesn't feel very good. And yeah, without going second, it's just not playable. Subterra. So Subterra was tier 3 before, but I think it's kind of hit the same issues that the Tri-Brigade did, where although it was in tier 3 before and was kind of hanging on there, I think now, once the meta's gotten slightly stronger, it's fallen out. I don't think it's in tier 3 anymore. I don't even remember the last time I saw a Tri-Brigade get a good result in a tournament. Since, in the last few weeks, it just seems kind of arse. Like, Tri-Brigade, thing with Subterra is it seems to have like a critical mass of stuff your opponent can do before you actually cannot control them hard enough. Like if you're setting up your field, you got your counter in your negate in hand, your set cards, your potential flips or banishes on field. You've only got a very limited amount of disruption, and if you do get broken, you are screwed. As your deck is trying to grind, trying to outvalue your opponent, and if your stuff's getting wiped on turn 1, you're screwed. You're just not. If you just don't have enough disruption on turn 1, it's doomed. And I think that might be the case right now. I think it's just kind of fallen off a little bit. It's definitely still a good deck. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple in top 100, so maybe it is sort of a tier 3 sort of a deck. But yeah, I think Gemini is probably doing better than it at the moment. Purely because of Spark. I think Spark is really useful right now. And I don't think they have an equivalent that sort of helps them. Like, how's this deck even go? I guess the only upside to it right now is it can play Nibiru. Nibiru is really good, except Nibiru is not good into Shadow. So I guess this archetype, if it avoids Shadow and plays against everything else, it's probably fine. Maybe it is tier 3, just because if it avoids everything else, it's probably fine. Specifically, it sucks into Shadow, but against everything else, it might be okay. How is the Utopia matchup for this, I wonder? It's probably not great. I mean, they never set up... if they set up 2 monsters, they get Lava Golems. They can't ever set up two monsters. They got 1 negate, basically. Because they can't even set up 2 monsters, like I said, or they just get, get cooked. That sounds kind of horrendous, actually. I'm going to put him down a tier. Alright. Sulphur Cord. This is despair. Sulphur Cord is does literally nothing going second. It's actually very similar to DD. It sets up a field going first, not the most insane end field, and then going second, it sets up nothing. You get cleaned up by everybody. So I don't have to say much about it. It's not doing very great. So at the moment, Tindangle lost their FTK, which is their whole claim to fame, and it's been replaced with Floodgates. Floodgates, unfortunately, are nowhere near as good because they get dropleted. So it just turns out that... because the critical mass with this deck in particular, when it comes to FTK decks, is if they're really consistent at FTKing, like super consistent, it means their win rate going first is through the roof. They've got like a... if they've got like a slightly better win rate and they've got a loss rate, so let's just say they've got like a... I don't know, I've got a 80% win rate going first and a... I don't know, 40% win rate going second or something, they're going to gradually climb just because they got way more wins than they do losses. I think the gap's probably a lot closer than that. It's probably like a 45% loss rate going... so when the FTK was popular, it was probably like a 45% or 50% win rate going second and like a... oh, wouldn't be that, way less. Like a 40% win rate going second and like a 90% win rate going first or something. Some like FTK sort of stat line. And without the FTK... that gap between win and loss closes significantly because droplet exists. People just droplet in response to your floodgate, and that's sort of it. Sometimes they're lucky, they can sort of dodge it with the flip effects and stuff, but I don't. It just basically what I'm trying to say is I think the deck's dog shit now. Okay, that sums it up. Okay, going first, that's all it can do. It can't FTK anymore, so it's relying on floodgates, which are a lot more flimsy than just trying to FTK your opponents. So they just cannot play the game whatsoever. Alright, I think I explained that very badly, but yeah. Anyway, hopefully someone got what I was trying to say there. Alright, we've got this deck, which is the Umbral Horror deck, which doesn't contain the Umbral Horrors. I was worried when I saw this initially that it would turn out to be very similar to that one Sky Striker gross thing with the skill deck that was played a while back that actually did okay in some tournaments, where it just played a billion tech cards and then just rely on the skill to sort of win the game for you. Turns out it actually has to play a lot more engine requirements than initially thought, meaning he's actually can't play as many board breakers, can't play as many hand traps, can't play as much stuff as I initially thought, has to play a lot of revive spells and draw spells to get to the revive spells, and just, I don't know, even playing the Sky Striker stuff doesn't feel very good because you try to summon multiple monsters on turn 1, and having just one unaffected dude is not enough, so I don't know. It doesn't feel very good to me. I'm going to put it in... I think it's as bad as these guys. It's not very good. I'd faced it initially, then it came out, and it was kind of not too great. Which is a good thing, because that was one of the worst design skills I've ever seen in my life. A skill based around Umbral Horrors that like, encourages you not to use them. Stupid skill. Alright, Lyrilists, they're just rogue tier. They're probably gonna be rogue tier until like the end of the existence, just because they do all the same shit they've always done. If your deck doesn't have a way to deal with a monster that can't be destroyed and is stopping them taking any battle damage, then they're always going to be okay. Also, obviously, it's a very popular deck. Literally every single KC Cup, there is a large portion of the player base still clinging to this deck list. There are tons of people still playing it. So it's guaranteed to do okay. It does great, and it does like okay against most matchups. The Shadow one is probably terrible for it, but that's the case for most decks in here, so I don't know. It's going to be sitting in rogue tier for now. It might even be probably doing a bit of a disservice to it not putting it in tier 3, but I don't think it's could be tier 3. Maybe it is tier 3. It is pretty well against everything else in here, just not Shadow. Oh no, just terrible versus Utopia, right? Oh, just awful versus Utopia, because that shit gets negated and it's permanent. Oh, that can't be good for it. Ooh. Okay, now it's rogue tier. That shit gets dominated by Utopia, I'm pretty sure. Alright, Salad. Salad is... Damn, there's gonna be nothing in tier 3 at this point. Salad can make Dweller, which is something against Shadow. But Salad's going first is pretty arse. So relying on like going first as like your win con probably isn't a good thing. It tries to like the whole point of Salad is to like an out-resource game sort of thing. And it's not out-resourcing Shadow. It just isn't. Not in its current iterations after all the nerfs. Yeah, I think it's not too great anymore. There's so much stuff in Rogue tier, man. I think Shadow was literally just bumped so much stuff that was considered tier 3 downward. Because before, every single one of these decks, before Shadow, I considered tier 3. Literally every single one of them. And I think Shadow was actually just knocked them all down a peg. Which is, yeah, not too great looking for the meta, not gonna lie. I prefer the meta's a bit more diverse, and I think this Shadow deck is gonna be knocking everything down. Utopia. This deck, I do think, is tier 2. So Utopia has a couple of advantages. First of all, going first, it can set up Dweller. It can set up the multiple negates and all that kind of stuff. Which, yeah, just having a Dweller in general is really good versus Shadow. Also, just based on like the tech choices they've been running, people have been playing things like Lava Golem and Cosmic Cyclone. Cosmic Cyclone's great versus Shadow, which is also like, gives me a little bit of hope for some of the other archetypes in here that maybe if they just start taking Cosmic Cyclone, they might be a lot better against Shadow. That might just be the thing right now. Maybe we're just waiting for people to sort of catch on to what the best techs are. But Utopia seems incredibly good at just setting up good turn 1 end fields and going second, also being able to like force out your opponent's stuff, because if they don't deal with it, they just get their full field negated by the spell card and placing the Utopia on the field. Yeah, I think Utopia is looking really good. I think it's it might be, I don't know if it's better or worse than Resonator. It's probably about on the same level though. It's turn 1 field just being out, just having access to Dweller and having access to Lava Golem, meaning it's good against, because Lava Golem's good against like everything in the game, excluding Shadow. Even sometimes it can be good against Shadow, depending on what fields they set up. If they, for some reason, put Winder on the field turn 1, instead of waiting for your turn to do it, you can just Lava Golem them. So I think, yeah, I think if it's a concern, it can have Lava Golem access, because it doesn't need its normal summon going second. It's insane versus everything in the game that isn't Shadow. And even against Shadow, it does have a decent-ish chance against them. Maybe against some of the worst of Shadows, you can have a good time. Yeah, if you open Cosmic and you've got a Abyss Dweller on the field, you're probably gonna be fine. Alright, then we've got your Perform Mage. So this has obviously been updated from the X-Sister stuff, which I haven't done in a tier list video yet, so I might as well look at them now. I thought this deck was gonna be a lot better when it first got when I first started playing it. I think when I made my video on it, it was actually doing really, really well. But as it turns out, things like mind control tech, like using mind control to steal things and that kind of tech gameplay, isn't that good at the moment? Or does it feel that great? Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of faith in this deck being it's certainly not as good as the stuff in Rogue tier right now, so I'm gonna have to put it in Meh. Even with access to a decent turn 1 field in the X-Sister stuff, I don't know, it's not. I think even just like the X-Sister end field, it was a little bit overhyped in terms of what it's actually doing. Because having 4 banishes like seems good in theory, but it's all tied to like one monster, and if something happens to that monster, you feel really bad. Like if that gets dropleted, that's it. Your disruption is just gone. So, or kaiju or whatever else someone tries to do to it, it just feels, yeah, not that great. Also, surprisingly, a lot of stuff that's like graveyard related, like Shadow, don't actually need to move stuff out of their graveyard. They just put stuff in the graveyard, which it's kind of weird. Even things like Resonator, they do obviously have like the guy that likes to revive from the graveyard, but a lot of their effects in graveyard are just effects when they're sent to the graveyard. And the whole thing about the counter for the counter of this deck, the whole point of it is when stuff's moved out of the graveyard. That's when you get all the different effects of your... I forgot the name of this archetype. Whatever the name of it. Exosister. That's when like their effects trigger when stuff is moved out of the graveyard, not when just stuff is just put in there, which is sort of what Shadow does. Their trap card... Obviously the trap card moves stuff out of the graveyard, but in general they're just putting stuff in there and that's where they get their effects from, so... Yeah, it's not doing too great. Buzzsaw Shark. Okay, so I have a bit of an interesting take on this deck. I think it actually is tier 3. So, the thing about this deck is it still has bad matchups into... It would still have a bad matchup into Shadow, but it has the potential to actually beat it. So, going first, you're setting up a Dude That Negates, an Abyss Dweller, and Slant That Negates special summons of cards that try to special summon. Abyss Dweller and a Slant That Negates special summons is literally perfect. Abyss Dweller just stops their graveyard, and the dude on field that stops special summons stops literally up to 3 fusion spells they try to activate. The only way I can see Shadow sort of clearing this field is by putting a dude on field with the skill, flipping it face up, then trying to banish a card. But that stops by the fact you've got a Utopia on field with the negate that just says no, you can't do that. I'm just going to negate that. So I actually think this deck is okay. Also going second, it can search for MST. It's just from their skill, just gives them an MST, which stops the Shadow Fusion Trap card. So I think this deck actually has potential to be... Yeah, I'm putting it in tier 3, because I actually think it has potential to be beating Shadow, which is... Yeah, a bit weird to say. I don't think... I didn't expect that when it first got... when I saw the skill after its updated form, but... Yeah, it seems okay to me. And against everything else in the pool, it seems really good going first. Going second is a little bit harder, but... With an Insane going first, it might just be enough. Obviously, it can still get into Nibirued. It can still get... Well, sometimes it can get into Nibirued. It can still get hit by the droplets. All the kind of board breakery stuff that's going around. Utopia just activates Lava Golem and you're just absolutely just tragic. But against other... But if they don't open specifically the board breakers and it's all... They're just playing their main engine pieces, this deck can actually farm them. So I'm giving it a chance. I'm going to put it in tier 3. I was thinking Gemini kind of farm it as well, but against some decks, it actually has a chance, which is more than I can say for a lot of stuff on here. All right, Heraldic Seal. So this is the Dragon Link icon I've chosen. I'm not talking about Boral. Boral can't actually play Heraldic Seal. I'm talking about the Dragon Link weird Gaia deck thing that's going around. It's meh, okay. It's a fun looking deck. I've seen people playing it. It looks a lot of fun, but it's incredibly meh, okay? You're just putting up a seals, a lot of time you're bricking, sometimes you're trying to hand rip, that is a pretty dire sort of thing trying to do, just summoning Leviathan, hand ripping for 1. You can get, like, I've seen some fields that have been pretty decent, but they seem to be, like, rare-ish, or even if they are kind of, I don't know, even if they do happen, like, consistently, they're still pretty meh in comparison to some of the other stuff on here, so I'm putting it in meh. Crystal Beast. So, last KC Cup, this deck went absolutely bonanza. It went crazy for some reason. There was like 6 of them in the top 100, which is like, where'd this come from? Where do all these people appear from? But now, it has given itself 2 more bad matchups. Shadow completely farms it, and Utopia, you are getting Lava Golemed out your ass, which is terrible for this deck. Its main downside was Kaiju, because if they lose the big fusion, that is like a lot of their disruption gone. Like, that's like, a lot of even their grind game is gone if you get rid of that big fusion, so, yeah. Utopia's gonna farm this, Shadow's gonna farm it, it's not gonna have a good time anymore. Against everything else, it's probably fine though, so I can still sit in the Rogue tier. Alright, Battling Boxer is going down to meh for me. It just doesn't compare to the stuff in Rogue tier right now. It doesn't compare to this stuff. It used to be okay, but the meta just keeps getting slowly stronger and stronger and stronger. And with that happening, Boxer is just, it's gone. It's no longer good enough. Hero is definitely in that category. Hero, it's literally the only way Hero is functional now is it draws 4 cards into a bunch of floodgates. That is literally how the top tier versions of Hero is played right now. One super play going second, is it enough? And going first, if you're relying on just drawing into floodgates, you can do that in like a bunch of archetypes. Hero is just one that just happens to draw a lot of cards, so it sometimes can win off that. But if you're relying on just floodgating your opponent, you're cooked, okay? You're cooked. You might as well be playing another deck that can just, like, in-art-type Floodgate, like something that can set up an Abyss Dweller or something. Relying on just trying to draw into it and it's a cooked game plan. It's just a cooked game plan. Alright. We've got your Springen. So I put Springen on here because Springen got the Springen version with Exo Sister, which is a lot better, actually, than this version of Exo Sister. Because Springen, it can play Nibiru for starters. Anything that can play Nibiru is good against everything that isn't Shadow, which is good. Which is why I think also Subterra might sneak into tier 3 just because of Nibiru gameplay. Nibiruing everything is just insane. Like, Nibiru might be enough to put this in tier 3. Because Nibiru is actually crazy. And this is probably the best of the Nibiru decks. Maybe I should put this in tier 3, just because it is like the best of the Nibiru decks right now. But yeah, this is pretty similar to Subterra in that it can play Nibiru, it can play Abyss Dweller, which is good against Shadow. It just has like a couple of good things going for it. I wouldn't put it anything too crazy though. I think the Resonator matchup is abysmal for it from what I've experienced, outside of opening, you know, the Rock. But outside that, it is abysmal. Also, going first, I don't think you can really set up much that is that beats Resonator. I think they just clear you. Yeah, I don't think they don't beat Shadow either, so yeah, I'm gonna put it in our rogue tier. Alright, Predaplant. So Predaplant has been interesting. They got their card banned, and then they farmed a bunch of tournaments randomly, which is like, huh, maybe this deck, even without the big fusion monster, is still good, just off just stalling, I guess. But I think now every single Predaplant player is probably going to move over to Shadow, as it feels the same sort of like role. It's a big fusion deck that has a bunch of combos and all that kind of stuff. So I think they're all just going to jump ship to Shadow. I'd be very surprised if many people play this anymore. So I'm going to put it in I'll put it in Rogue tier, I guess. But I think everyone that plays Shadow everyone plays Predaplant is jumping ship to Shadow. So I'd expect, player base wise, you're probably going to see it in there too. You're never going to see it again, I'd imagine. But maybe I'll put it in here for now. Actually, I think with all the people play... Now, actually, I'm pretty sure with all the people playing stuff that's going to be used to counter Shadow, specifically Abyss Dweller, with that being like a popular trend now, I think this deck is just going to fall in popularity, because people are actually going to be countering it by accident, because they're trying to counter Shadow. Time Thief. So I've seen... I think it was yesterday or the day before, we had a big Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, big Duel Links tournament, and Time Thief got top 4 in it. I was like, what? And then I realized, oh, they gave this deck Nibiru. That's how good Nibiru is. Nibiru actually managed to carry this deck to a top 4 like topping, so I still think it's meh. But the fact you can play Nibiru is a huge upgrade. Especially considering they're going first is always pretty good. They can set up Dweller or that. Fuck, I'm gonna put it in Rogue tier, because going first they can set up Dweller, which is great, and going second, well, they have Nibiru access now, so Nibiru access is fantastic against everything that isn't Shadow. So good stuff. The Twins. The Twins got their new Link monster, but they still share every single problem they used to have, with the main one being they don't have a skill. Everything on here, I'm pretty sure you'll notice, is all skill related, at least has some sort of skill to help them out. This does not. This is in dire need of some kind of skill, specifically to sort of help them going second. They did get a crosswipe skill, which is the new skill lets them have crosswipe in hand, which can be used in response to your live twin. So you summon your live twin, use crosswipe, tribute it off, pop a card in the field. Pretty good, because then the live twin still gets the other live twin from the deck. But in general, I don't think it's that great. That skill was not enough to get the deck to have a proper turn 2. And going first, it does everything it used to do, just slightly better, which I don't think is enough. I think it might be better than the stuff in here, though. It's probably on par with the stuff in here. Yeah, I'll put it in spare. I think it's on par with the stuff in here. Okay, hottest take of the video. This is going to annoy a lot of people, because people have been People have been talking a lot of stuff about this deck. I'm pretty sure even on DLM's tier list with the top player council, I think they also put it in high potential, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they have it in high potential. I think this shit is ass. Like, it is. I don't know where people are getting this sort of like vibe from it from. From my experience playing it, it's setting up a DDD end field. It's literally just doing what DDD does. The exact same thing. People, I think, are getting too excited about having Slate unaffected in a game where we've got Underworld Goddess now. It doesn't really matter. So the only thing that sort of this deck does is it sets up a spell negate, a monster negate, and a trap card that bounces. It just is pretty bad. That field is just not that great. It's literally the same as what DDD sets up. Also important to note, that shit is chain blockable. It's shit to droplet. It gets shit on by lava golems, which is already popular stuff. It dies to Nibiru sometimes, depending on what combo lines they go down. They can sometimes play around Nibiru if they play it in a certain way. It also, oh my god, there's also a lot of triggering stuff about this deck. The way Konami has designed it is really bad, because they've made it set the skill kind of it's kind of hard to describe without showing you. So let me just bring up a speedroid list. Oh, should click here actually. The way the extra deck functions, it's really hard to play everything, because you want to play this, but if you play this, you can't really summon it turn 1, because summoning it turn 1 is like an end piece, because you can extend into it. Like, you can end on an end field of this dude, this dude, this dude, and the trap card if you're lucky, but you don't want to extend into this, because, well, your whole combo line goes through one of your level 7s, it banishes it, and the other one goes to the graveyard as part of your combo line. So you don't actually have any level 7s to summon with this thing. There's literally not enough space in the extra deck to make the card effect work, where you tribute it off to summon out your 2 level 7s. You can't do that. There's just not enough space in this deck. For some reason, they haven't given you... Like, for some reason, Shadow, Konami is like, alright, Shadow, you can have 16 fusion monsters in your extra deck. Speedroid? No, you can't. So this has, like... Its grind game becomes really bad outside just trying to revive stuff back from the graveyard, which is okay, but it'd be nice to have some cards in my extra deck on the following turn. Because if stuff gets wiped in turn 1 and the turn passes back to you, you're relying basically exclusively on the graveyard, as your entire extra deck is gone from your first turn, which feels awful. So I have zero faith in this deck. I think it's terrible. I think it's absolutely abysmal. Its grind game's awful. Its going first field is the same as DD. The only thing it has going for it, going for it is going second. It's slightly better than most of the decks. Its going second is pretty good. Still dog shit into Shadow, but against a lot of stuff, going second, it's actually a lot more playable. But it's going first field, like I said, terrible, and it's got zero grind game. Its extra deck space is completely cooked. I have zero faith in it. Alright, Duel. Duel is incredibly interesting to me. Because I think this deck... If Shadow didn't exist, this would be top tier. I actually think it would be. It has Nibiru access, which is insane against most things. It has Lava Golem access, which is something even Utopia can't really do, because it kind of screws with their summons. It has access to literally any tech card you want. You can even play Sewer Poly and a bunch of random stuff in the extra deck. You can play Dogmatica stuff. It just has a lot of stuff going for it. Going second is crazy. It's 100% consistent going second. I mean, you could play literally 9 different board breakers in your deck and just have the most insane going second deck in the game. But going first, it is draw Nibiru or draw your quick play spell, or you're completely screwed. More so draw your Nibiru, because even if you do draw your quick play spell going first, it can feel a little bit rough. But the fact it has Nibiru access means going first, it can sometimes just win games for free, and going second, it is incredible. So I have some faith in this deck. Not enough for me to put into tier 3, but I would like to see some KC Cut results, and hopefully there are some that make WCQ results, and hopefully someone makes it in top 100 with this thing, because I think it's doable. Only issue is Shadow, and the fact it can't really go first, so we'll see how that turns out. Maybe they start playing things like Cosmic Cyclone to try to help with the Shadow matchup, and maybe that's enough, who knows. Sky Striker. So Sky Striker got a new Link monster, and it didn't do anything. It's just meh. I don't think I have to explain much about this. I think every time Sky Striker is basically the deck that has, like, very similar to what I was talking about with Subterra earlier, there's like a critical mass for it, where if the meta is weak enough, it becomes absolutely incredible because it can just delete a field instantly. But its going first is just putting a monster on field that's unaffected and hoping that's enough. And with one negate maybe, that's not enough anymore. That one negate and one unaffected monster, you are dead as hell. If someone's making Underworld Goddess, that shit's gone, you're dead. So it really requires its going second to be insane, which if there's too much stuff for it to deal with, too much stuff to remove, too much stuff to try to break through, it becomes not good enough anymore. So it really needs a critical mass of its going second as being insane. Otherwise, its going first is too bad for it. Branded. I don't even know why that's on here. I'm putting that in despair. It's awful. Okay, the cards themselves aren't terrible. It's just the fact they haven't released enough of them yet. Like, there's like 3 branded cards. It's like, okay. Calling it branded is like a disservice. It's basically a Dogmatica deck. Speaking of which, I don't think I've actually included Dogmatica on here as pure. Well, it's basically the same as this anyway. So they're using the same skill if you're playing pure, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, it's basically a Dogmatica deck at this point. The branded side of things isn't that great, and I don't think... Yeah, there's not enough branded cards yet. This stuff has potential to be insane in the future. We just need to be in that future when there's actually more cards for the archetype. Alright, we've got your Exosister. Pure Exosister is the worst version, in my opinion, by quite a bit. I think this version is better. I think playing it in the other archetypes like Springen is way better. It is just... Yeah, it's not that great. It's probably about as good as the stuff in here, though, so keep it in meh. Star Seraph, that's Rogue. Star Seraph it can make Abyss Dweller, it has a lot of access to the Xyz stuff. I don't think it can summon Nibiru, I don't think. But in general, it just has, like... It has the option to draw a billion cards, which means you can draw a billion text, similar to what Hero does. It just does that a lot better, because it actually has access to decent cards as well. So I think it's still sort of Rogue tier. I've seen some decent results from it recently, which is... showing something, I guess. But yeah, it also sets up the Utopia stuff as well, so it's probably okay. I don't think it's going to be anything too crazy, though. Certainly not good enough to be in the top tiers. Ancient Gear. Ancient Gear. Well, they've gained some terrible matchups. Obviously, Shadow is terrible for it, considering this deck's whole thing is going second. It wants to go second. If it goes second, it goes absolutely crazy. But now Shadow exists, and it doesn't really play any removal. It just sort of tries to break through fields. Doesn't have removal to get through, your Shadow stuff, which is kind of bad for it. Not gonna lie. I already thought it wasn't that great into things like Resonator, and now Shadow exists, so it has 2 incredibly sort of not great matchups. I don't even know if this thing can play through a Utopia Enfield. Maybe it could, but I don't know. I think it's probably Rogue. Yeah, holy shit, that is a interesting tier list. Literally, Shadow has just taken everything that was a higher tier and just shot it downward. Literally, if you took Shadow off this tier list, you could bump everything up a tier, and it would probably look... that's what I would think the meta would be. Because there's so much stuff in here that's probably deserving of tier 3, but just not quite good enough just because Shadow farms it, which is crazy. Yeah, I think Neville has a good chance of sneaking upwards, but I think it's going first is too bad right now. And of course the Shadow matchup is terrible. Is there anything else I'm overlooking? There's a lot of Nibiru decks that might be okay. I think Subterra is probably still the best of the Nibirus, which is why I'm still putting it in tier 3. How does this do into these two, though? Is Subterra even playable into these two? I don't think it's even playable into these two, is it? I don't know. It has Nibiru access and makes it good into everything, all these guys for sure. I'll put it in tier 3. I don't know if it's good enough for tier 3, man. Got a lot of results in the last KC card. It's good into Resonator, but is it good into these guys? I just don't think so. I wonder if, Did these guys have it on their tier list in tier 3 still? Is their tier list update? What did they say about Subterra? Did they even mention Subterra? Subterror. I even mention it. I don't know if Subterra is going to be holding on much longer. Let's see, dude. Let's see. With any tournament toppings of Subterra recently? Subterra 9 in the last 2 weeks. And since the new box, there hasn't been many tournaments since the new box. So it's kind of hard to judge based on that, but that's COG. I don't think tournaments. I don't know if this deck's going to be doing very much anymore with the addition of the new stuff. I don't see it doing well into Shadow. I think they can force out their negate really easily, and that's most of their disruption. I also don't see it doing too well into Utopia. Nah, I think it's getting dropped a tier. Especially considering, like, a lot of the power of this deck was in Nibiru, and now it's Shadow in the game. That kind of screws it a little bit. Yeah, I think that is probably my tier list. Yeah, I think that's why I'm gonna leave it. Alright guys, that's gonna be this video. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Like I said at the start of the video, if there's any decks that I didn't include on here you want me to rate, leave them down in the comments below and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you see the next one. And yeah, also let me know down below if there's any disagreements you have, because I love to read all the disagreements people are. I'm interested to read the Speedroid comments. I know there's gonna be a lot of you guys down there. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Laters.